Hey, this is Lee Waller, and I am working in Unreal Engine 5.6 with the motion design tools. I'm going to take a look at recreating this animation right here with the earth and then mostly focusing on the text that is rotating around it. This uses the new text layer type in the material designer. Before we get started, we'll need to collect some materials and textures. I did a search for earth textures, and this is a good site that always comes up. SolarSystemScope.com, and I'm going to scroll down here and you will find this section right here for Earth. We'll want the Earth Day map, the Earth clouds, the normal map, and the specular map. You can download either the 2K version or the 8K version of this. Once you have them downloaded and placed in a folder, we'll import them in just a minute into Unreal. I'm also going to bring in another texture from Quixel Bridge. If you don't have Quixel Bridge, this isn't absolutely necessary that you bring this in. You can use another texture. Once in Quixel Bridge, I'm going to search for this cashmere gold. And this one right here, I'm going to select it and download it and add it to the project. Once it's downloaded, you can click the Add button, and it's been added to the project. I'm going to go ahead and close out Bridge. Now that we've added that gold material, I'm also going to import the earth textures that we need. So here in the content drawer, I'm going to right click and I'm going to set up a folder for this. And I'll just call this materials. And I'm going to jump in there and one more folder real quick just to keep things organized. Earth. And this is where I'm going to import these images. I'm going to navigate to where I saved those, and I have the 8K versions downloaded, so I'm going to grab those real quick. Those four there, the day map, the clouds, the normal map, and the specular map. I'm going to hit open on those, and you'll see this little note right here that tells us that the normal map was imported as a normal map, which is helpful. The first piece I'm going to create is the earth. So I'm going to start off with the sphere. So I'm going to double click on the sphere right there. And with that selected, I'm going to go into the details. And on the sides right here, I'm just going to bring this up to 96. That is kind of a resolution, the smoothing of the sphere, so we don't have a lot of noticeable lines in this. Once we've done that, we can start creating the material. Let's go to Material Designer right here and click on it. And I'll go with this PBR and hit Continue. I'm going to slide this over just a little bit, and let's see. I'm going to open up the content drawer, and let's go to the base color right there, and need to go back to the content drawer, and I'm going to bring in right here to this texture, the earth map, and we'll go to the specular tab, and we'll need to change this right here from a color to a texture. And now we're going to drop that specular map right in there, make sure that is selected. We'll go to content drawer, grab that and drop that in there. Then we can go to the normal map, make sure that is selected, and then back in the content drawer, we'll grab the normal map, drop that in, and we'll leave the clouds for another material. So let's take a look at this material that we've created. Swing this around a little bit, and I want to make an adjustment on the normal map. So I'm going to drop in here and go down to normal, and I'm going to bring that way up to 50, and I'll zoom in, and that's going to give us some depth on the material, or at least the appearance of depth, especially in these mountains. One more adjustment I want to make is on the specular. It's a little too shiny, so I'm just going to drop that down to a 0.2. And now we can save this. And we're going to save as new material designer, and I'll save it right here in the earth folder. So MD_earth, and save that, and I'll close that out. So there is our earth, and now I want to create the clouds for it. So over here in our 3D shapes again, just like what we did, I'm going to double click on the sphere, and we have our second sphere in there. I'm going to select it and go to the details. Just like before, I'm going to bring the sides up to 96, and then I'm going to make one adjustment on the scale. I'm going to set that to 1.01, just a little bit larger than the earth. With that sphere selected, let's go into the details panel to the material and we'll go to Simple right here, click on that, and go to Material Designer. We'll just go with the PBR for right now. We'll make some changes once we get in there. And here on the global settings, it's not active. So let's jump to the channels and then back to global settings. And now we can adjust this from opaque to translucent. We'll go into the base color and we're going to set up a couple of layers right here. On the texture right here, make sure it's selected. And then on the drop-down menu, let's just search for white. We just want a white square texture. So add that in. And then here on the mask, let's select that and we'll jump into our content drawer and we're going to grab the 8K Earth clouds right there and bring that over. And you'll see that those clouds are starting to show up. By dropping that into the mask slot, it is clipping out the black areas and leaving us with the white clouds. I'm going to duplicate this layer, just right on that layer, right click, and we'll go down to duplicate. And basically what we're doing is just doubling this up so that it's a little bit stronger look. I am going to change this from normal to screen. And depending on what you're doing for lighting for the Earth, you may want to explore the emissive color. You can go in here and just like we did before, change this to a white text. With that selected right here, search for white. And again, that white square. And you can see how that greatly strengthens the white clouds. Now, the only thing about this is an emissive color, so it does not respond to lighting. So if you're not worried too much about how the Earth is going to show with the lighting, that might be an option. I'm just going to go ahead and turn that off. Maybe dial it in just slightly. We'll take a look at the lighting. So to do that, I'm going to go into the channels and then I'll go to the emissive and I'll drop that down to 0. I'm going to save this material now, go to Save As New Material, and I will put that in the Earth folder and I will do Earth Clouds and save that. And we can close this out. I'm going to go into the Motion Design Outliner and label these two. This will be Earth and this will be Clouds. I'm going to make the clouds a child of the Earth. So wherever we move the Earth or whatever we do, we'll rotate it a little bit. The clouds will also rotate along with it. I'm going to go to my camera now and go to the Cine camera. If that camera is locked, go ahead and unlock it. Make sure it is selected. Then we'll go back into the details and I want to bring this closer. So I'm going to push in with the camera and I'm going to bring that to 350. That brings it a lot closer. You'll see there our clouds are on top of the Earth now. So now I want to create the text that's going to rotate around this. And to start that process, I'm going to add in a cylinder. So right here on cylinder, double click on that. We'll make a few adjustments to the cylinder. I'm going to bring the sides up to 64. And then on the mesh size, with this all locked, X, Y, and Z, I'm just going to bring that up to 116. And to create the text, we're going to create a material for this. For the cylinder, we're going to create two materials. There's a top and a bottom to it that we need basically to make it invisible, and then the text that we wrap around it. I'm going to jump out of the camera real quick, and I'm going to turn my speed down just a little bit. And then I'm going to back out. Let me see. So we can see this. And you see there's the top there. So we're going to make a material for that top and bottom. Let's make sure that the cylinder is selected. And then you'll see here that we have a material. And then we also have a material for the bottom and for the top. Here on the one for the bottom, I'm just going to select the Material Designer. I'm going to set this one to translucent and hit continue. And for this in the opacity, we're just basically going to bring that down to nothing. Let's save that. Save as New Material Designer. And I'll jump out of this and just drop these into the root here for my materials folder. And I'll just call this Invisible and close that out. And that's been assigned to the bottom layer. So let's go ahead and assign that to the top layer since we've saved it. We can click on Simple, go to Asset now, and we can search that, MD, and there it is right there. And so we can add that now. Now we can build the material for the text. I'm going to jump back into my camera here, make sure that the cylinder is selected. We'll go right here to Simple and we'll choose Material Designer. We'll use the PBR, hit continue on that. And we're going to make an adjustment here on the blend mode. So let's just jump to the channels and then jump back to global settings. That opens that up. And I'm going to change this from opaque to masked. It's going to change our channels up here. And I am going to go into the base color, and that cashmere gold that we downloaded just a few minutes ago, I'm going to go and apply that here. So in my content drawer, I'm going to go to Mega Scans right there and go to the surfaces, cashmere, and this granite right here. I'm going to grab it and drop it right there. And back in my content drawer, I have this other texture. And as I hover over it, you'll see there at the top the name. And right there at the very end of the name, it has this ORD. That's telling us that in this texture, it uses the three channels R, G, and B to pack in there an ambient occlusion, a roughness, and a displacement channel. I'm going to use it for the ambient occlusion and the roughness. So I'm going to go to those channels and drop this into both of them. So I'll go first to the ambient occlusion. And again, back in the content drawer, I'm going to grab that and drop that right there. And then I'm going to change the channel mask on this. Since I know the O is the first texture, I'm going to go with red on this, ORD, and then RGB. And then I'm going to choose the roughness channel right here and do the same thing. Grab that and drop it into the roughness channel. And then we'll change that to the green channel. Now we want to create the text for this. We're going to go into the opacity mask. I'm just going to open this up a little bit more. And with the opacity mask, we're going to use the text to basically just be a cookie cutter for this and cut into this material, leaving only the text and cutting everything else out. So here in the mask slot, we're actually going to change this from a texture. Let's click on that and then go down to advanced and we'll go to text. So now you see that in this mask slot right here, anything that's white is going to be visible and that texture is going to show through. And then anything that's black is going to be invisible. With that selected, we're going to jump down here and this is where we're going to do most of our work. The first thing that we want to do is clamp this texture. By clamping this texture, we're only going to have one instance of whatever we type in for our text. We'll drop down just a little bit to text right here, and hidden right here in the font info is a number of things we need to work with. For right now, I'm going to leave it on Roboto, but I want to change this from regular to bold. And this size is interesting because it doesn't really indicate the size of the text, but the resolution of it. Right now, it's very jagged, not smooth. But if we increase this number, and I'll bring this up to 320, you'll see that we get very smooth curves and lines with it. Now I'm going to drop on down and we'll type in our text. So whatever the phrase is or word is that you want, we'll type it in right here. And I'm just going to type in all caps, roam around the world, and we'll select off from that. After typing that in, one thing we need to do is we need to unlink the UVs so that these two are not linked and so that I actually have the properties that I need to adjust this. Let's just select that. Again, make sure that you're on the mask slot, that's selected, and that we're in the texture UVs. And this is where we're going to really begin to shape this to demonstrate the properties of this texture UV. On the offset, you'll see that this slides this left and right and up and down right there. And then we have tiling, which right now the tiling, because we have it clamped, it's not going to do exactly what it's supposed to, but this is where we're going to size this, which is going to be very useful. And then you also have the pivot there, which is very similar to the offset. So I'm going to reset those real quick, and then we'll go back into them. So on the offset, I'm going to set this X to 0.538. We'll leave the Y as it is. We're going to leave the rotation as is. On the tiling, let's separate those two, unlock that right there. And we'll set the first one to 2.1. We'll tab over and we'll set that to 5. And then on our pivot, we'll leave the X to 0.5 and our Y to 0.34. So in the example of the finished animation, rotating around the Earth is actually 2 instances of this phrase. So this is the first one. And what I'm going to do is just duplicate this layer and we'll create our second one. So right there, we'll right click on it and we can go to duplicate. And most of the work is done. Once it's done compiling shaders, we'll only make one adjustment and we'll have our second instance of the phrase. I'm going to drop this down just a little bit so we can see this. And I'll go with the top layer right there, select it, make sure that our mask is selected, and we'll drop back down to the texture UV. And we'll need to make one adjustment on the X value of the offset. Select that, and we're going to set that to a negative 0.48. We should be good with this material now. Let's save this. We'll go right there and save as new material, design material, and go back into our materials folder. And I'm going to set this up as text. We close that out and we have nothing. We need to make one more adjustment. So on our cylinder there, make sure the cylinder is selected. We'll go into the details panel and let's drop down to the material section. This first material should be our text. So let's drop down to the material UV right there and slide down to where the offset is. And on our X value right there, let's start scrubbing that up. And basically we're going to need to just set that to 1. And then if we do want to adjust so that it is more centered of the Earth, we can then grab the Y value and set it to 0.05. I'm just going to click in here so we can kind of see everything. And so now we've created our text. Before we move on, I'm going to go right here and I'm going to label this as my text. And now we can work on animating this. I'll go ahead and animate the text layer first. So with it selected, I'll go into the details panel and we're going to animate this on the rotation. And before we animate, I want to make a couple of adjustments to the sequencer. I'm going to change from 5994 to 24 frames per second right there. And I'm going to adjust the sequencer to 10 seconds. So let me type in 240 right there. And then I'm going to set the playback end right there at the 240 mark. And so now we have 10 seconds on our sequencer. I'm going to jump back to the beginning of the sequencer right there so we can set that first keyframe. And right on rotation right here, I'm going to click that keyframe right there, and you'll see now that on the transform properties, it is dropped in rotation, and we do have a keyframe for roll, pitch, and yaw on that text. I'll go all the way to the end, and all I'm going to adjust is the yaw right here. I'm going to set that to 360, and I will add in one more keyframe right there. And so now this will do one full rotation. But I do want to change these keyframes to linear. So I'm just going to select all of them. And then right click on any one of them and go to linear. Jump back to the beginning of the timeline and then we can hit play. And there is our text. Let me close this up. So now to animate the Earth, let's go back into the Motion Design Outliner and make sure that we have the Earth selected. We'll probably need to select it right there in the outliner because when we click over here, we might accidentally get the clouds, but we want to animate both of them. So by selecting the Earth with the clouds being a child of them, both of them will be animated. So back in the details panel, we can go to rotation on yaw, and you can see then that we can animate the rotation. I'm going to set that back to 0 and go to the sequencer, bring the timeline indicator back to the beginning, and I'll set a keyframe just like I did before for rotation. And then I'll jump to the end, and I'm just going to do a -90 on that right there. Set that keyframe. So it's a slower Earth rotation than the text is rotating. Go back to the beginning of the timeline, and we can hit play on that. I do need to change those keyframes to linear so that they're not easing in and easing out. So let me do that real quick. Let me select both of these. Right click on it and go to linear. And we can watch that again. Most of the time when we do see the Earth rotating in animations, it's very similar to this. Now the Earth does sit at a 23.5 degree angle. And if you want to accomplish that, we're going to need to do a little bit more work. I'll go in here to the Earth and go to the rotation. And I don't need the roll in the pitch keyframes, so I'm going to eliminate those, select them, and delete them. That'll give me the ability then to adjust this, and you'll see there that I can adjust that, but it doesn't rotate the way we would expect it to. I'm going to leave the bounding box there so that you can see it, and then I'll hit play. And so that rotation is not exactly what we would expect. So to accomplish this, let me set this back. What we're going to need to do is I'm going to go into the motion design outliner, and with the Earth selected, I'm going to wrap this into a null object. And so all of that is wrapped into the null object. And we're actually going to use, and let me go ahead and label this Earth null. We're actually going to use the rotation of the null object for this other rotation. All we're going to need to do is just set it. We don't need to actually animate it. So I'll go into the details. And right here, I'll set this to 23.5. And now when we play it back, it rotates at that angle that we would expect it to. Again, that may not be your preference, so either way will work. So in this null object, if I want to just set that back, we can set that back to 0. And this is the way most of the time we'll see an animation of the Earth. For lighting this, I went into the lights right there, selected that, and just added in a point light. That point light is dead center of the Earth right there. So I'm going to drag that out and bring that up. And that little X right there, we can select the point light, go in there, and let's just set that to movable. And once I kind of got that in place a little bit where I wanted it, I'm going to jump back into the motion design outliner, and I'm actually going to turn off our directional light and skylight. This is going to give me just a little more control over the look that I want. And so I'm going to bring this out forward just a little bit. I'll go into my details here. And I think I actually brought this out quite a bit. Let's say -150. And then I'll slide this over. I think maybe push that out a bit. One of the things that I'm looking for are the shadows, because I don't really like harsh shadows on something like this. And by controlling the lighting this way, it gives me more flexibility over it. Now, I've pushed the light way out here and up. You can kind of see the specular from that light right there. So that kind of lets us know where that light's going to be hitting. I'm going to make some adjustments to this. I'll bring the intensity up to say 60. We'll take a look at that. And let's see if we want this to come out a little bit more. I think so. And you can work with the attenuation radius to kind of see where you want that light landing. I think that'll work right there. And then the source radius. You have all of these options that you can kind of work with. I'm going to go ahead and set that around 500, and then I'll bring the soft source radius up. And so all of this, you can just work with it to get the look that you want. I may bring the intensity back down just a little bit. And I'll just bring that source radius back. Now that I have that soft source radius up, I like that look a little bit better. And you can work with all of this to light this to your preference. Jump back to the beginning and take a look at that. I hope this tutorial has been helpful. For more on motion media design, hit the like and subscribe button and check out my other tutorials.